I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was Jennifer, my daughter-in-law. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold, when she said, "Martha, we're flying to Europe tomorrow. I've already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And she hung up just like that. After nearly 20 years of treating her like my own daughter, she discarded me like garbage. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter-in-law didn't know. My name is Martha Wilson. I'm 75 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew Jennifer. I had been a widow for 6 months. Frank, my husband of 50 years, died of a heart attack while we were having breakfast together, just like we had every morning for 5 decades. That morning, he had poured me coffee, given me a gentle kiss on the forehead, and said, "Good morning, my darling." Those were his last words. Since then, Jennifer had been more present in my life, or so I thought. She visited 3 times a week, helped with funeral arrangements, accompanied me to the grocery store. She even suggested I get a complete medical checkup. "You need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone, Martha," she would say with that smile I thought was loving, but now understand was calculating. The beach house in Malibu had been our sanctuary for years. Frank and I bought it when Robert, our son, was in college, a significant investment we made through years of hard work and saving. Every summer we gathered there, building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Jennifer brought her friends and later her husband Richard. I cooked for everyone, cleaned, did the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never thought she would see it only as a cash cow. And the car, that vintage Cadillac that Frank babied like it was his 3rd child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil religiously, always parked it in the same corner under the shade of the oak tree. Jennifer knew what that car meant to me. It was the last thing I had that still carried his scent in the seats. When she hung up, I sat there in that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other sick people, and for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something strange happened inside me, a calmness I hadn't felt since Frank's death, because at that moment I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Frank had handed me a manila envelope. "Martha, keep this in your dresser drawer. If anything happens to me, open it after some time, but only when you feel ready." I tucked it away without thinking much about it. After the funeral, with so much grief and paperwork, I simply forgot. But there it was, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me in for my appointment. The doctor examined me, said I was in good shape for my age, just needed more rest and better eating habits. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Jennifer's voice, about how Richard was probably behind all this. He never liked me, always saw me as a burden. I left the doctor's office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Jennifer, but as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about all this. My daughter-in-law thought she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't know was that Frank, my dear Frank, had always been a forward-thinking man. The bus arrived and I sat by the window. I watched the city pass by, the houses, the stores, people rushing from one place to another, all with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had my own, and I was about to discover them. When I arrived home, I went straight to my bedroom. I opened the dresser drawer, and there was the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel several documents inside. Frank had written my name in his careful handwriting on the front. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. Outside it was beginning to get dark, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope slowly, like I was unwrapping a birthday present. What I found inside would change everything. There were legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Frank. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar handwriting. My dearest Martha, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worries. Over the years, I've invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house, we have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Jennifer and Richard live. We also have shares in 3 companies worth more than you can imagine. You're wealthy, my love. You've always been wealthy, but now it's official on paper too. My hands trembled as I reviewed the documents. There were deeds to houses in different neighborhoods, an apartment downtown, a small hotel on the coast, and indeed the 20-story building where my daughter-in-law lived. Frank had been the silent owner for the past 10 years, but had put everything in the name of a company I knew nothing about, and according to the papers, I was the sole heir to that company. There were also bank statements from accounts I never knew existed, numbers that seemed unreal. Frank had been a high school teacher for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a very savvy investor. Every dollar we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied silently, and I never knew anything about it. In the letter, Frank explained that he had kept everything secret because he didn't want me to worry about money, nor did he want Jennifer to know about our real financial situation. You know, our daughter-in-law, Martha, if she knew we had so much money, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. What irony! Our daughter-in-law had ditched us thinking we had nothing, when in reality, we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house touching the old furniture, the decorations that Jennifer had always criticized for being outdated. I looked at the family photos hanging on the wall, especially the one where she was holding baby Robert, sitting on Frank's lap, laughing. Where had that sweet young woman gone? When had she become so cold, so calculating? The next morning, very early, the phone rang. It was Jennifer again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had learned to distrust these changes in tone. Martha, how are you? I wanted to tell you that we've already transferred the money from the house and car sale. We deposited your share in your account. It's not much, but it should help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, Martha. Obviously, we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. It's fair, isn't it? We need the money for the investment in Europe. Richard has an incredible business opportunity there. 30% of my own things. How generous. I understand, Jennifer. And when are you leaving? This afternoon. We already have our bags packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe more, if the business works well. But don't worry, Martha. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something suitable for your needs. Suitable for my needs, as if she knew what my needs were. All right, Jennifer, have a good trip. Oh, Martha, I knew you would understand. You've always been so reasonable. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, and for the first time in months, I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since Frank died. The situation was so absurd it was comical. My daughter-in-law had robbed me, kicked me out of my own house, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, and all to finance a European adventure that would probably be a disaster. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she had discarded me. 20 years of life dedicated to her, sacrifices, unconditional love, and she had eliminated me from her life with a 2-minute phone call. That really hurt. I checked my bank account online. Indeed, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me was a mockery. They had sold the beach house for much less than it was worth, surely because they needed the money quickly, and they had practically given away Frank's car. That afternoon, from my window, I saw Jennifer and Richard loading luggage into a taxi. He was carrying 2 huge suitcases. She had a travel bag that looked very expensive. I watched them laugh, kiss, make plans. They seemed like 2 excited teenagers about to embark on an adventure. They never looked up at my window, never said goodbye. When the taxi left, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Frank's documents spread out on the table. I had to make decisions. I could call a lawyer, claim my properties, recover everything they had taken from me. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more educational way. I called Michael, the lawyer who had handled Frank's affairs. He had been at the funeral, given me his condolences, told me that if I needed anything, I shouldn't hesitate to call him. Well, now I needed him. "Mrs. Wilson, it's so good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm fine, Michael. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Frank that I don't quite understand." "Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there." That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply. I dreamed of Frank. He was sitting in his favorite chair reading the newspaper as he did every morning, and when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I had felt for so many months either. It was something akin to determination. For the first time since Frank's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to recover what was mine, but not in the way Jennifer expected. The next morning, I got ready with more care than usual. I put on my burgundy dress, the one Frank always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair, put on a little makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Michael's office was in a downtown building. It was old but elegant, with marble floors and large windows. Michael greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the documents, his expression completely changed. "Mrs. Wilson, this is much more than I imagined." Frank was a very intelligent man. "Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of—" "I know, Michael. I've already reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." Michael explained that everything was in order, that the documents were legitimate, that I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I already suspected: the sale of the beach house had been illegal because Jennifer had no right to sell it. "We can recover the house immediately, Mrs. Wilson, and we can also take legal action against your daughter-in-law for fraud." "No, Michael. I don't want to take legal action. I want to do this another way. I want everything to remain secret for now. Can you help me?" Michael looked at me curiously but nodded. "Of course you are my client. What do you need?" I need you to discreetly recover the beach house, to do whatever is necessary to void that fraudulent sale, and I need you to help me take real control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter-in-law lives. I understand. It will be a process that will take a few weeks, but it's completely feasible. Perfect. And Michael, I need no one to know that I'm behind all this, at least for now. When I left Michael's office, I felt like I had awakened from a very long dream. I walked through the downtown streets, observing the people, the buildings, life continuing its normal course, but for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow who had been abandoned by her daughter-in-law, but in secret, I was a wealthy woman who was silently orchestrating the recovery of her assets. Michael worked efficiently, and every few days he called to give me updates on the progress of the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house in the meantime. It was mine, after all, although Jennifer probably expected me to move to a boarding house room. Every morning I woke up, had breakfast at the same table where Frank and I had shared so many years, and then went out for a walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors greeted me with that mixture of pity and curiosity they reserve for recent widows. Sarah, my neighbor of many years, approached me one afternoon while I was watering the plants in front. "Martha, dear, is it true that Jennifer went to Europe and left you alone?" "Yes, Sarah. She left with Richard. They have business plans there." "And how are you going to live, honey?" We all know that Frank didn't leave much money. If only she knew. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you food, help you with shopping." "You're very kind, but I'm fine, really." Sarah looked at me with that expression I knew well. It was the same look I had received after the funeral, compassion mixed with a bit of relief that it wasn't her tragedy. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." These conversations were repeated constantly. The butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store, they all spoke to me in that soft tone they use with the unfortunate, and I nodded, smiled, thanked them for their concern, but inside a part of me enjoyed this act. It was like living a double life. Michael called me on a Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Wilson, I have good news. I managed to void the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without problems. The house is yours again." "Excellent, Michael. And about the building where Jennifer lives, that's more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company, but we need to make some administrative changes for you to have direct control. It should take another 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Jennifer. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks and I hadn't heard anything from her. Not a call, not a message, not even a postcard. For her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed. But I knew that was going to change soon. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Frank and I had traveled hundreds of times. The house was exactly as I remembered it, small painted cream with a terrace overlooking the sea. The new owners had placed some plants in pots, but other than that, everything was the same. I sat on the sidewalk across the street and looked at it for an hour. I remembered the summer afternoons when Robert was little, running on the beach building sandcastles, Frank grilling fish on the barbecue while I prepared salads in the kitchen, Robert bringing friends, later girlfriends, later Jennifer, All those happy moments that she had reduced to a simple commercial transaction. An older gentleman came out of the house and saw me sitting there. He approached with curiosity. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you, I'm just remembering." "Did you know the previous owners?" "Yes, I knew them very well." "What a shame what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a bargain, but now it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to return the house." "You met them personally?" "No, we did everything through intermediaries, but they told us the daughter was handling everything because the mother couldn't." What a sad situation. If only he knew how sad it really was. "Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money." "Yes, fortunately, everything was resolved well. Although now we have to look for another house, we really liked this one." I left there with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt me, it was the ease with which Jennifer had lied about me. She had invented a story about my illness. She had used my supposed vulnerability to justify her actions. For her, I wasn't a person with feelings, but an obstacle that had to be removed. That night, I called Michael again. "Michael, I need you to help me with something else. I want to recover Frank's car, too." "That's going to be more difficult, Mrs. Wilson. The car was in your name, but your daughter-in-law had a power of attorney that allowed her to sell it." "How is that possible?" "Apparently, you signed that power a few months after your husband's death. Don't you remember?" There it was. The moment when Jennifer had begun to plan all this. I vaguely remembered signing some papers that she had brought me, telling me they were to facilitate the funeral and inheritance paperwork. I was so confused by grief that I signed without reading. How naive I had been. "I understand, Michael. Is there any way to recover it?" "We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove that you signed that power under deception or coercion." "Let's do it. I want to recover everything they took from me." Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I went out to buy necessities, talked to neighbors, kept up appearances. But in the afternoons, I became a businesswoman. I studied Frank's documents, talked to Michael, planned my next move. I learned things about finance that I never thought I would need to know. I discovered that Frank had been much smarter than I thought. Each of his investments had been carefully calculated. The building where Jennifer lived, for example, was not only profitable because of the rents, but was in an area that was rapidly appreciating in value. I also discovered that Richard, Jennifer's husband, had debts, many debts. He had taken out loans using the apartment where they lived as collateral, not knowing that he wasn't the real owner. When the banks realized this, he was going to have serious problems. Michael called me on a Friday with important news. "Mrs. Wilson, we've completed all the procedures. You now have full control of all your properties." I also recovered Frank's car. The buyer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it in exchange for a small compensation. "Excellent work, Michael. Now I need you to help me with one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter-in-law." "What kind of letter?" "An eviction letter." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Wilson, are you sure you want to do this?" "Completely sure. She decided I wasn't important in her life. Now she's going to discover how important I am." "I understand. Do you want me to send it to her in Europe?" "No, I want you to deliver it when she returns. I have a feeling it will be very soon." I wasn't wrong. That same afternoon, Sarah came running to my house with fresh neighborhood gossip. "Martha, did you know that Richard is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law, who works there, told me they're investigating some loans he took out using the apartment where they live as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't his." "Really?" "Yes. And it seems Jennifer didn't know anything about it. They're saying she's going to have to return from Europe to sort out this mess." What a complicated situation. Yes, and the worst part is that Richard apparently lied to her about the business in Europe. There was no business, he just wanted to escape from the debts he had here. Perfect. Everything was going exactly as I had expected. Jennifer had trusted Richard, had sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering that he wasn't the man she thought he was. That night, I sat on the terrace with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. Frank used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived a full life, watching over their families from heaven. If that was true, then he was up there watching as his plan unfolded perfectly. "Thank you, my love," I said to the sky. "Thank you for taking care of me even after your death." The next day, Michael called me early. "Mrs. Wilson, there's news. Your daughter-in-law has just arrived in the country. She's at the airport alone." "Alone?" "Yes, apparently Richard stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a very big fight." "I understand. Have you sent the letter?" "I'm going to send it today. She should receive it tomorrow." I hung up the phone and stood there in the kitchen feeling a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the moment of the first real move had finally arrived. Jennifer was about to discover that her mother-in-law was not the defenseless victim she believed. Jennifer arrived at her apartment on Tuesday night. I knew this because Sarah, who seemed to have informants throughout the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. "Martha, your daughter-in-law returned last night. I saw her go up with a suitcase, but she looked very bad, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, as if she had cried during the entire flight. Alone, completely alone. And something strange, Martha, when the doorman asked her for the keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the concierge to open with the emergency copy." Interesting. Richard had the keys, which meant he had probably decided not to return, or maybe Jennifer had discovered something about him and had fled. In any case, my daughter-in-law was back, and very soon she would receive my little welcome gift. Michael called me that same afternoon. "Mrs. Wilson, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed that your daughter-in-law received it personally." "Perfect. How much time did we give her?" 30 days to vacate the apartment as established by legal norms. "But, Mrs. Wilson, are you sure you want to do this? She is your daughter-in-law, after all." "Michael, my daughter-in-law kicked me out of my own house with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things without asking me. She treated me like garbage. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences." "I understand. I just wanted to make sure you had considered all the implications." "I have considered them, Michael. All of them." That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake imagining Jennifer's face when she read the letter, the initial confusion, then the disbelief, then the panic. She would probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam her, but when she called to verify, she would discover that everything was completely legal. The next day, as if she had been waiting for my call, the phone rang at 8 in the morning. It was Jennifer, and her voice sounded desperate. "Martha, Martha, I need to talk to you urgently." "Good morning, Jennifer. How was Europe?" Martha, I don't have time for that now. I received a very strange letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate my apartment in 30 days. It must be a mistake. Right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction letter. How strange. From whom? From a company I had never heard of. It's called, wait, let me find the letter, Wilson Investments, Inc. Do you know this company? Frank had used his own name for the company. How poetic. No, Jennifer, I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I want to find out. Martha, I need you to help me. I don't know what to do. Richard left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman. And now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening. There was the confirmation. Richard had abandoned her, probably when the money ran out, or when he realized that the legal problems at home were more serious than he thought. Poor Jennifer. She had sacrificed her family for a man who was worth nothing. I'm so sorry, Jennifer. Where are you now? I'm in the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Martha, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was perfect. Now that she was left without the man for whom she had abandoned me, she remembered she had a mother-in-law. Of course, Jennifer, come whenever you want. I'm coming right now. I hung up the phone and looked in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, pulled my hair back in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of concerned but resigned mother-in-law. When Jennifer arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to see: a poor, vulnerable widow who had been abandoned by her own daughter-in-law. Jennifer arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was surprised at how bad she looked. She had lost weight, had deep dark circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and neglected. Her eyes were red from crying. Martha, she said, and for a moment I thought she was going to hug me, but she stopped as if suddenly remembering how things had ended between us. Come in, Jennifer. Would you like some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where I had read Frank's documents weeks earlier. Jennifer looked small in that chair, lost, like when she was young, and came to tell me about her college problems. Martha, I'm so sorry for how I left. I know I didn't behave well toward you. It's over, Jennifer. No, it's not over. I treated you badly. I said horrible things to you. Her voice broke. And now I don't have anyone. Richard left me. What happened with Richard? He ran off with a waitress at a hotel in Paris, a 25-year-old girl. It turns out there was never any business in Europe. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape from the debts he had here, and he used the money from selling your house to finance his adventure. All the debts? Yes, Martha, many debts. It seems he had been taking out loans for years, using the apartment where we lived as collateral. But now I find out that he wasn't the owner of the apartment. How is that possible? Here was my opportunity. I don't know, Jennifer. Property matters are very complicated. The problem is that now the banks are after me for his debts. They say that since we were married, I'm also responsible, and on top of that, this eviction letter. Martha, I don't know what to do. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. She started to cry, real tears of genuine desperation, and for a moment my motherly heart softened. I wanted to hug her, console her, tell her everything would be all right. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she called me from the doctor's office, The ease with which she had discarded me, the way she had spoken to me as if I were a burden. "Have you talked to any lawyer about the letter?" "I don't have money for a lawyer, Martha. We spent all the money in Europe. Richard took what little was left when he ran off with that woman." "And what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I thought that maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find a job and can get a small place to live." There it was, the question I had been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own house, after selling my things, after treating me like garbage, now she wanted me to rescue her. She wanted the poor widow she had created to save her from the consequences of her own actions. "Of course, Jennifer, this will always be your home." Jennifer looked at me with surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be so easy. "Really, Martha? After everything that happened?" "You're my family, Jennifer. That's never going to change." She got up, and this time she did hug me. It was a desperate hug, from someone who is drowning and clinging to the only thing they can find. I hugged her too, but not with the unconditional love of before. There was calculation in my embrace now, strategy. "Thank you, Martha. I promise I'll find a job soon. I'm not going to be a burden." "Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll see what options you have." Jennifer left that afternoon to get some things from her apartment. I stayed in the kitchen thinking about how easy it had been. She had come to me exactly as I had planned, broken, desperate, without options, and the best part was that she didn't suspect anything. For her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother-in-law who needed her compassion. But this was just the first part of my plan. Having her living with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let her settle in, feel safe, believe she had found refuge in my house, and then, when she least expected it, I was going to teach her the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Michael. "Michael, I need you to do something else for me. I want you to investigate Richard's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes, to whom, and what legal options I have to separate them from my daughter-in-law." "That will take time, but it's feasible." "Perfect. And Michael, I want you to keep this in absolute secrecy. No one can know that I'm behind this investigation." "Of course, Mrs. Wilson, may I ask what your final plan is?" "My plan, Michael, is very simple. I'm going to save my daughter-in-law, but first she has to understand what it really means to hit rock bottom." When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine that Frank kept for special occasions. It had been a long time since I had a special occasion as good as this one. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I had all the good cards in my hand. Jennifer moved into my house the next day. She arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that was left of her previous life. I watched her unpack in her old room, the same one she had slept in when she first married Robert, and I could see the humiliation in each of her movements. She had gone from living in a luxury apartment to taking refuge in her youth's bedroom. "Martha, I found this in the apartment," she said, showing me a manila envelope. "It was among Richard's things. It has your name on it." It was another envelope from Frank. My heart raced, but I kept my composure. "My name? How strange." "Yes, look." She showed me the envelope. Indeed, it had my name written in Frank's handwriting, but this envelope was different from the one I had found in my dresser. This one was smaller, newer. "Maybe Richard found it among Dad's things when he died and forgot to give it to you," Jennifer said. "It's possible. May I see it?" I opened the envelope in her presence. Inside was a short letter and a small key. The letter read, "Martha, if you're reading this after having opened the main envelope, it means our daughter-in-law is going through a difficult time. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank, downtown branch. The number is 247. There's something in there that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Frank." Jennifer read the letter over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Dad had a safety deposit box? I had no idea. I lied. Your father-in-law never told me about this. Do you think we should go see what's in it? I don't know, Martha. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are. But Jennifer, maybe there's something important in there. Documents or, I don't know, maybe something of value that could help us. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Jennifer was clinging to any possibility of finding a way out of her situation, and I was going to let her cling a little more before showing her the complete reality. "All right," I said after a calculated pause, "we can go tomorrow." That night, Jennifer and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She had cooked, trying to be helpful, but the food tasted of guilt and desperation. She told me more details about what had happened in Europe, and each story was worse than the last. "Richard lied to me about everything, Martha. Not just about the business, but also about the debts. I thought he only owed a little money, but it turns out he owes more than $300,000, and the worst part is that he used my name for some loans without me knowing. How is that possible? He forged my signature. When I married him, I gave him some documents to handle the banking procedures for the joint account. I never thought he would use them for this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know?" "I don't know. It's all so complicated. The banks say that since we were married, I'm responsible for all his debts anyway. And the divorce? I don't even know where Richard is now. He completely disappeared. His phone is disconnected. He doesn't respond to emails. Nothing. It's as if he vanished into thin air. Perfect. Richard had fled like the rat he had always been, leaving Jennifer to face the consequences of his actions alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter-in-law was experiencing exactly what I had felt when she abandoned me, the betrayal of someone she had completely trusted. "I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I didn't know things were so bad." "I didn't know either, Martha. I thought Richard loved me, that we were going to build something together, but it turns out I was just an easy way to get money and documents." Jennifer started to cry again. How could I be so stupid? How did I not see what he really was? It was tempting to tell her that I had seen the signs from the beginning, that I had tried to warn her that Richard had never seemed trustworthy to me, but that would have broken my facade of the understanding and vulnerable mother-in-law. Love sometimes blinds us, Jennifer. But Martha, I didn't just ruin my life, I ruined yours too. I treated you horribly. I took away your house, your car, your things, and all to give them to a man who abandoned me at the first opportunity. It's over now, Jennifer. No, it's not over. Now we're both in trouble because of me. You lost everything Frank left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're two poor women trying to survive. If only she knew, I thought, if only she knew that at this moment I have more money than she can imagine, that I own the building where she lived, that I can solve all her problems with one phone call, but it wasn't time yet. The next day we went to the bank. Jennifer was nervous but hopeful. I maintained my act of the confused widow who didn't understand much about finances. The bank employee took us to the safety deposit boxes, verified my identification, and opened box number 247. Inside were jewels, many jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some pieces as heirlooms from Frank's family. Others were completely new to me. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Jennifer gasped. "Martha, this must be worth a fortune." "Do you think so?" "Yes. Look at this emerald and this pearl necklace. Martha, Dad left a treasure here." According to Frank's letter, the jewels were worth approximately $200,000. It was a significant amount, but it was nothing compared to the rest of my assets. It was like finding coins under the sofa when you have $1 million in the bank. "What do we do with this, Martha?" "I don't know, Jennifer. They're family heirlooms." "But Martha, we could sell some pieces. With this money, you could get your beach house back and I could pay off some of Richard's debts." There it was again. Even when she found something valuable, Jennifer's first reaction was to think about how to use it to solve the problems Richard had created. She hadn't learned anything yet. "Are you sure you want to use your father-in-law's inheritance to pay off Richard's debts?" "What other option do I have, Martha? If I don't pay something, the banks will foreclose on everything I have. And technically, what do you have? Was everything in Richard's name?" "Yes, everything. That's the problem." We took the jewels home. Jennifer spread them out on the kitchen table and examined them one by one, calculating which ones she could sell and which ones she might keep. It was painful to watch her reduce her father-in-law's memories to numbers on a piece of paper. "Martha, I think with this we can solve the most urgent problems. Not all of them, but at least the most serious ones." "And then what?" "Then I'll look for a job, try to rebuild my life. Maybe I can find a small room to rent, something cheap." "You don't have to leave, Jennifer. You can stay here as long as you need." "No, Martha. I've already abused your kindness too much. Besides, you need money too. You can't support me indefinitely." It was fascinating to see how Jennifer had constructed a completely false image of my financial situation. For her, I was a poor widow who could barely support herself, when in reality, I had enough resources to buy the entire building where we had found the jewels. That afternoon, Michael called me. "Mrs. Wilson, I have the complete report on Richard's debts. The situation is worse than I thought." "How much worse?" "He owes more than $300,000 to several banks, and he also has debts with private lenders. What's more concerning is that he used forged documents with your daughter-in-law's signature for some of these loans." "That means Jennifer is responsible?" "Legally, it's complicated. If we can prove she didn't know, we could free her from some debts, but it's going to be a long and expensive process." "How expensive?" "For a good lawyer specializing in this type of case, probably $50,000, and there's no guarantee of success." "I understand. And if she simply pays the debts?" "If she has the money, that would be the quickest solution. But I doubt she has access to that amount. Michael, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to free my daughter-in-law from these debts, but don't tell her anything yet." "Are you going to pay, Mrs. Wilson?" "I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect my daughter-in-law, but this has to be handled in a very specific way." When I hung up, I found Jennifer in the living room looking at the jewels with a sad expression. She looked lost, like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. "What are you thinking about, Jennifer?" "About Dad, about how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I've done with my life. Your father-in-law loved you very much, Jennifer. He would understand." "No, Martha. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, not to be selfish. And I did exactly the opposite. I abandoned my mother-in-law for a man who turned out to be a liar. I sold my family's memories for money. I ruined everything he built." For the first time since she had returned, I heard genuine remorse in her voice. It wasn't just regret for the consequences of her actions, but a genuine recognition that she had done something morally wrong. "People make mistakes, Jennifer. The important thing is to learn from them." "But how do I learn from this, Martha? How do I repair the damage I've done?" There was the question I had been waiting for. Jennifer was finally ready to face the truth about her actions and their consequences, but it still wasn't time to reveal my final card. First, I had to let her hit rock bottom completely. The following days were crucial to my plan. Jennifer decided to sell most of the jewels, keeping only the engagement ring Frank had given me and a small necklace that had belonged to his mother. I watched her prepare to go to jewelry stores, research prices, negotiate with buyers. It was painful to see her reduce decades of family history to commercial transactions, but necessary for her to understand the real weight of her decisions. "Martha, I got $180,000 for the jewels," she told me one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I expected, but it's enough to pay the most urgent debts." "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I don't have a choice. If I don't pay something soon, they'll foreclose on everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove I have some sort of legal connection to the properties." How ironic the situation was. Jennifer was worried about losing a house that I owned, paying debts from a man who had abandoned her with money from jewels that had belonged to the same man who had created the fortune that could save her. And how are you going to decide which debts to pay first? I talked to a free financial advisor at the bank. She told me to prioritize debts that have real collateral because those are the ones that can affect properties or generate immediate foreclosures. Jennifer had matured a lot in these few weeks. The woman who had sold my things without consulting me was now carefully investigating each financial decision. Suffering had made her more responsible, but also more fragile. That night, while she organized the debt documents on the table, I received a call from Michael. "Mrs. Wilson, I have important news. We managed to locate Richard." "Where is he?" "In Paris, as your daughter-in-law suspected. But here's the interesting part. He's trying to get French residency through a fake marriage to that young woman your daughter-in-law mentioned." "A fake marriage?" "Yes. Apparently, the girl needs papers, and he needs a way to stay in Europe without being deported. But the most important thing is that we found evidence that he deliberately forged your daughter-in-law's documents with the intention of fleeing the country." "That means Jennifer can be freed from the debts?" "With this evidence, yes, we can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter-in-law wouldn't have to pay anything that Richard did behind her back. It was perfect. I had the way to save Jennifer from all her debts legally without her suspecting that I had the money to do it. Michael, I want you to start the legal process immediately. Should I tell your daughter-in-law?" "No, I still want the process to be completely finished before telling her anything. I don't want to give her false hopes." "Understood. This will take about 3 weeks, maybe a month. Perfect. When I hung up, Jennifer looked at me curiously. Who was that, Martha? A lady who was asking for Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor on the corner. She got the wrong number. Lying had become easy. Each day that passed, I felt more comfortable with this double life I was leading. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother-in-law that Jennifer believed I was. On the other, I was a wealthy woman, silently orchestrating the salvation and education of my daughter-in-law. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Jennifer struggle with decisions she had never had to make before. How to stretch money for food, how to negotiate with creditors, how to look for a job when your credit history is ruined. It was a cruel but necessary education. Martha, today I went to 3 job interviews, she told me one afternoon, arriving home with swollen feet and a tired face. In 2 of them, they told me they can't hire me because of the pending legal problems. In the 3rd, they offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night. Are you going to take it? I don't have a choice. It pays very little, but it's better than nothing. And I can work at night so I can keep looking for something better during the day. Seeing my daughter-in-law, who had lived a comfortable life for more than 20 years, preparing to clean offices at night broke my heart, but it also filled me with pride. She was finally facing reality without expecting someone else to solve her problems. Are you sure you can handle that much physical work? I'm going to have to learn. I can't continue to be a burden to you, Martha. It's enough that you let me live here without paying anything. This is your home, Jennifer. No, Martha. This is your house, and I'm here because of your generosity, but I'm not going to abuse that forever. One night, while Jennifer was on her first cleaning shift, Sarah came to visit me. She sat in the kitchen with me, drinking tea and observing the family photos that adorned the walls. Martha, I have to ask you something. You knew Jennifer was going to return in these conditions. What do you mean? Well, it's just that when she left, she seemed so sure of herself, so arrogant. She talked about the great life she was going to have in Europe, about how successful Richard was, and now she returns completely destroyed, working as a cleaner, living with you again. Life takes many turns, Sarah. Yes, but there's something more. I've been watching Jennifer these days, and she looks different, not just sad, but humble, as if she's learned something important. Sarah had always been very perceptive. What do you think she's learned? I think she's learned the value of things she had taken for granted, like having a mother-in-law who loves her unconditionally. Maybe. Martha, can I tell you something? When Jennifer left and treated you so badly, many of us thought you would never forgive her, but here you are, taking care of her again, giving her a home when she has nowhere to go. She's my family, Sarah. Yes, but not all mothers-in-law would do what you're doing, especially after being treated the way you were treated. If Sarah knew the whole truth, that I had the power to solve all of Jennifer's problems, but was choosing to let her suffer a bit more so she would learn the complete lesson. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing what a good mother-in-law would do, but I also think Jennifer needs to fully understand what she lost when she abandoned you. What do you mean? I think she needs to value you not just as the mother-in-law who rescues her when she's in trouble, but as the strong woman who built a stable life for 50 years. She needs to respect you, not just need you. Sarah had hit the nail on the head. That was exactly the point of my entire plan. I didn't want Jennifer to return to me out of desperation. I wanted her to return out of genuine respect and mature love. And how do you think that can happen? I think it's already happening. I've seen her these days, Martha. The way she speaks to you now is completely different. She's no longer the daughter-in-law who gives you orders or treats you like you're a burden. Now she's an adult woman who is genuinely grateful to have a mother-in-law like you. That night, when Jennifer returned from her job, I saw her arrive tired, but with a new dignity. She had earned those few dollars with her own effort, and that meant something to her. How was your first day? Difficult, but not as bad as I thought. The other ladies who work there helped me a lot. One of them, Dorothy, taught me the tricks to clean more efficiently. Dorothy. Yes, she's 60 years old and has been cleaning offices for 20 years. She told me she started after her husband left her with 3 small children. She says it's not the job she dreamed of, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman. She is. She told me something that made me think a lot. What did she tell you? She told me there are 2 types of people who end up doing this job. Those who are there because they didn't have opportunities, and those who are there because they ruined the opportunities they did have. She asked me which group I was in. And what did you answer? I told her the truth, that I had all the opportunities in the world, a family that loved me, a stable home, an inheritance, and I ruined it all to follow a man who was worth nothing. What did she say? She laughed and told me, "Well, honey, then at least you know exactly why you're here. That puts you 1 step ahead of most people." Jennifer poured herself a glass of water and sat with me at the table. "Martha, I want you to know something. These days have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. Why? Because I finally understand what really matters. It's not money. It's not living in the most luxurious apartment. It's not impressing people. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart." Jennifer, No, let me finish. You have every right to hate me for what I did to you. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took everything Frank had left you. I treated you like you were a nuisance, and now I'm here again expecting you to forgive me and take care of me. I've already forgiven you, Jennifer, but I haven't forgiven myself, and I'm not going to do so until I prove that I've really changed, that I've learned from my mistakes. Michael called me the next morning. "Mrs. Wilson, I have excellent news. The legal process is almost complete. We can free your daughter-in-law from all of Richard's debts." It was time. After weeks of watching Jennifer struggle, work, and reflect on her mistakes, the moment had finally come to show her that she had never been alone, that she had always had someone silently watching over her. "Michael, I want you to arrange a meeting. It's time for my daughter-in-law to know the whole truth." Michael arranged the meeting for Friday morning at his office. I told Jennifer that I had secured an appointment with a lawyer who might help her with her legal problems, but I didn't explain the details. She agreed to come, although she was nervous about the cost of the consultation. "Martha, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I barely have enough to cover basic expenses." "Don't worry about that for now. Let's just hear what he has to say." We arrived at Michael's office punctually. Jennifer had dressed in her best clothes, which now looked a bit big on her thinner body. She was nervous, playing with her hands, expecting more bad news on her endless list of problems. Michael greeted us with his usual professional smile. Mrs. Wilson, Miss Taylor, thank you for coming. Thank you for receiving us, Jennifer replied. Although I should warn you that my financial situation is very complicated and I probably can't afford high fees. That's precisely what we're going to talk about, said Michael, exchanging a look with me. But first, I need you to review these documents. Michael handed Jennifer a thick folder. She opened it and began to read, her expression gradually changing from confusion to surprise. I don't understand. These documents say that Richard forged my signature, that there's evidence of fraud, that I'm not responsible for the debts. That's right. We've been investigating your case for the past few weeks. We found sufficient evidence to prove that you were a victim of identity fraud. But how is this possible? Who paid for this investigation? I don't have money for this. Michael looked at me. It was my moment. Jennifer, there's something I need to tell you. What is it, Martha? I took a deep breath. After weeks of acting, I was finally going to reveal the truth. Frank left me more than you knew. Much more. What do you mean? Michael, show her the other documents. Michael took out a second folder and handed it to Jennifer. This time, the documents were property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, all the assets that Frank had built in secret. Jennifer read in silence for several minutes. Her face went through a complete range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally understanding. Martha, this says you own the building where I lived. Yes. And that you have other properties, bank accounts, investments. Yes. This means that when I sold the beach house, it was your house and the sale was fraudulent. I've already recovered it. Jennifer stared at the papers, trying to process the information. How long have you known this? Since the day you called me from the doctor's office. You knew all this when I returned from Europe asking for help? Yes. You knew you could solve all my problems when you saw me crying every night. Yes. There was a long, tense silence. Jennifer closed the folders and looked me directly in the eyes. Why, Martha? Why did you let me suffer if you could help me? This was the question I had been waiting for weeks, because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. What? You needed to learn the value of the things you had lost, the value of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you abandoned me, it wasn't just money you took from me, it was dignity, it was love, it was trust. Jennifer began to cry, but these weren't tears of self-pity like the ones she had shed during these weeks. They were tears of deep understanding. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like you were garbage. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not in the way you expected. I didn't save you by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Michael intervened discreetly. Miss Taylor, your mother-in-law has paid all the legal expenses to free you from Richard's debts. She has also recovered all the properties that were fraudulently sold. You are completely free of legal problems. And the cleaning job I got, you can leave it if you want, I said. But I hope you don't. Why? Because that job is teaching you something you never learned when everything was easy. It's teaching you the value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the importance of valuing every dollar you earn. Jennifer wiped away her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter-in-law who needs her mother-in-law, but the look of an adult woman who respects another woman. "Do you forgive me, Martha?" "I forgave you a long time ago, Jennifer. The question is whether you can forgive yourself." "I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things." "People make mistakes, Jennifer. What's important is what we do after we recognize those mistakes." Michael left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Jennifer and I sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. "Martha, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson." "Which lesson?" "That there's nothing more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally." During these weeks, the only thing that kept me sane was knowing I had a home with you, that no matter how much I had ruined my life, you were still my mother-in-law. That's never going to change, Jennifer. I know, but I also know that I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just with words. We left Michael's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer mother-in-law and daughter-in-law united by blood and habit. We were two adult women who had chosen each other after going through the hardest test possible. The following weeks were about reconstruction, but not the kind Jennifer expected. Despite knowing that I had sufficient resources to solve all her problems, she decided to keep her night cleaning job. "Martha, I need to finish what I started," she told me one afternoon as she prepared to go to work. "I can't simply return to a comfortable life as if nothing had happened." "Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever." "It's not a punishment, it's a way to remember who I was and who I want to be now." I watched her put on her work uniform, something unthinkable a few months ago when she lived in the luxury apartment with Richard, but there was something different in her posture, in the way she moved. She was no longer the broken woman who had arrived crying at my door. She was someone who had found dignity in honest work. Sarah came to visit me that afternoon, as she had every few days since Jennifer had returned. "Martha, there are very strange rumors circulating around the neighborhood." "What kind of rumors?" "People are saying that you're not as poor as we all thought. Someone saw Jennifer leaving a very elegant lawyer's office downtown, and then they saw her paying all her debts at the bank." "People talk a lot, Sarah." "Yes, but they're also saying that you recovered your beach house and that somehow you managed to resolve all of Jennifer's legal problems. That costs a lot of money, Martha." Sarah knew me too well to fool her for long. "What do you want to know exactly?" "I want to know if my friend of 40 years has been lying to me about her situation." I poured myself a cup of tea and sat across from her. It was time to be honest with someone else. "Frank left me more than anyone knew, Sarah. Much more." "How much more?" "Enough for Jennifer and me to never have to worry about money again." Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "And why did you pretend to be poor all these months?" "Because I needed Jennifer to learn something she couldn't learn any other way." I told her the whole story: Jennifer's cruel call, my plan for silent revenge, the weeks watching her hit rock bottom, and finally the revelation in Michael's office. "Martha, that's brilliant and terrible at the same time." "Terrible?" "Yes, because you let your own daughter-in-law suffer when you could have helped her immediately. But also brilliant because I understand why you did it." "Do you really understand?" "Yes. Jennifer needed to learn the value of the things she had lost. If you had simply given her money to solve her problems, she would have learned that there's always someone who will rescue her from the consequences of her bad decisions. Exactly. But Martha, didn't it hurt you to see her suffer? Every day, every night I saw her cry. Every morning I saw her get up to go to work tired and defeated, but I knew that if I rescued her too soon, she wouldn't have learned the complete lesson. And do you think she learned it? See for yourself. Jennifer knows that now she has access to enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to keep her job. She knows she can move to a better place, but she decided to stay here with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about debts, but she's using her own savings to help other women in similar situations. She's helping other women? Yes, she became friends with the ladies she works with, and she's using part of the money she earned cleaning offices to help a colleague who's having trouble paying for her son's daycare. Sarah smiled. That's not the Jennifer who went to Europe. No, it's not. This Jennifer understands that money is a tool, not a goal. She understands that dignity comes from work and respect, not from material possessions. That night, when Jennifer returned from work, she found me reading in the living room. Martha, I have to tell you something. What happened today? Dorothy asked me if I was the daughter-in-law of the rich lady from the north side of town. What did you tell her? I told her yes, that you have enough money for me not to have to work. And you know what she asked me next? What? She asked me why I keep working. So I explained to her that it's because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own 2 feet. And what did she say? She laughed and told me, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mother-in-law taught you to be truly rich." Dorothy is very wise. Yes, and she made me understand something important. It's not about the money you have, but how you use it and how you relate to it. Jennifer sat with me on the sofa. Martha, I want you to know that I've made a decision. What decision? I'm going to stay living here with you, but not as a daughter-in-law who returns to her in-laws' house. I want to stay as an adult woman who chooses to share her life with her mother-in-law. What's the difference? The difference is that I'm going to pay my share of the expenses. I'm going to contribute to the maintenance of the house. And I'm going to treat this relationship as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect each other. Jennifer, you don't need to. Yes, I do need to, Martha. I need our relationship to be different from what it was before. Before, I was a daughter-in-law who took her mother-in-law's love and care for granted. Now I want to be an adult woman who values and nurtures the most important relationship in her life. And your job? I'm going to keep working, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to study. I want to prepare myself to do something more meaningful with my life, but I want to do it step by step, earning each opportunity. Do you have any idea what you want to study? Yes, I want to study social work. These weeks taught me how many people are going through difficult situations without having anyone to support them. I want to use the resources we have to help other women who are going through what I went through. It was perfect. Jennifer had not only learned to value what she had, but she had found a way to use her experience for something constructive. And what about Richard? Michael told me he was arrested in France for the fraudulent marriage. He's going to be deported soon, but honestly, Martha, I don't care anymore. That part of my life is over. You don't feel resentment? No. Richard did me a favor without knowing it. If he hadn't abandoned and betrayed me, I would never have hit rock bottom. And if I had never hit rock bottom, I would never have truly learned to value what I have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed completely at peace. My plan had worked perfectly. Jennifer had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but had emerged from the experience as a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. Frank would have been proud. 6 months later, our life had found a new balance that neither of us would have imagined before. Jennifer completed her social work studies with excellent grades, and I decided to use part of my resources to establish a foundation to help women in situations of domestic violence and economic abandonment. Martha, the letter from the university arrived. Jennifer told me one morning, coming into the kitchen with an envelope in her hands. They accepted me into the master's program. How wonderful! When do you start? Next semester. But Martha, I want you to know that I'm going to pay for it with my own savings. I've been saving money from my job at the government office where I work now. Jennifer had gotten a job in social services after graduating, helping families in crisis. The salary wasn't high, but she had learned to live with the essentials and value every dollar she earned. Are you sure? We can easily afford the master's program. I know, but I need to do it on my own. It's part of who I am now. Sarah arrived that afternoon for tea, as she had done every Friday for the past few months. She had become a confidant to both of us, observing our transformation with fascination. Martha, I have to confess something, she said as she poured herself a second cup. At first, I thought you had been very cruel to Jennifer. And what do you think now? Now I think you were the wisest mother-in-law I've ever known. Look at your daughter-in-law, look at her. It really was true. The Jennifer who was in the living room studying for her exams was completely different from the one who had gone to Europe months earlier. This Jennifer had a serenity that came from within, a confidence based on her own achievements, not on material possessions. Did you know that yesterday I saw Jennifer at the market buying vegetables for a family she's helping through her work? She hadn't told me about it, and when I asked her why she used her own money instead of the government budget, she told me that some things can't be measured in official budgets. That night, Jennifer and I had dinner on the terrace, something we had turned into a tradition. It was our time to talk about the day, plan for the future, and simply enjoy each other's company. Martha, I received a very strange letter today, she told me as she cut her salad. From whom? From Richard. From prison in France. Apparently, they sentenced him to 2 years for marriage fraud. In the letter, he says he regrets everything he did, that he wants to ask for my forgiveness. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, I don't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, not a desire for revenge. It's as if that part of my life had passed decades ago, not months ago. Are you going to respond to him? No, not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. That Jennifer who married him no longer exists. This Jennifer has nothing to talk about with him. I was impressed by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting across from me had developed an inner strength that came from having hit rock bottom and having risen on her own. Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Martha? What? That true love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love is the one that teaches you what you need to learn even when it hurts. It's a difficult lesson to learn, yes, but necessary. Richard told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. He convinced me that I deserved a life of luxury without effort. You taught me that true wealth comes from work, respect, and genuine relationships. That night, after Jennifer went to her room to study, I sat on the terrace alone, looking at the stars and thinking of Frank. I had promised him that I would take care of our daughter-in-law, and I finally felt that I had fulfilled that promise in the right way. I hadn't taken care of her by giving her money when she needed it. I had taken care of her by teaching her to take care of herself. I hadn't saved her by solving her problems. I had saved her by allowing her to learn to solve them herself. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the beach house together for the first time since I had recovered it. Jennifer hadn't wanted to go before, saying she needed time to process everything that had happened. "Are you ready?" I asked as we got into the car. "I think so." The trip was quiet but comfortable. When we arrived, Jennifer sat for a moment in the car, looking at the house where we had spent so many family summers. "It looks exactly the same," she finally said. "Some things don't change, but others do. I'm not the same person who sold this house." We went in together. The house was clean and tidy, exactly as Frank and I had kept it for years. Jennifer walked through each room, touching the furniture, looking at the family photos hanging on the walls. "Martha, I want to ask your forgiveness." "You've already asked for my forgiveness, Jennifer." "No, I want to ask your forgiveness specifically for this house, not just for selling it, but for reducing all our family memories to a commercial transaction." "It's already forgiven." This house represents 20 years of family summers, birthdays, Christmases. Dad built that terrace with his own hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim on that beach. And I turned it all into money to finance the adventure of a man who was worth nothing. She sat on the sofa, where Frank used to read on Sunday mornings. "You know what hurts me the most?" "What?" "That when I sold it, I didn't feel anything. It was just another property. Now being here again, I can feel Dad in every corner. I can hear his laughter, smell his morning coffee, see his reading glasses on the table. He is here, Jennifer. He's always been here." "I know. And I also know that he's proud of how you handled all of this." We spent the entire day at the house, cooking together, cleaning, fixing small details. It was like a ritual of reconnection, not just with the place, but with the values that place represented. When the sun began to set, we sat on the terrace Frank had built overlooking the ocean. "Martha, I have a proposal." "What is it?" "I want us to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women who are coming out of situations of domestic violence, a place where they can stay while they rebuild their lives." It was the perfect proposal. Frank would have loved the idea of his beach house serving to help other families. "I think that's a beautiful idea, Jennifer. We can use part of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I can supervise the program through my work." "Are you sure you want to turn our family sanctuary into that, Martha?" "The best sanctuaries are the ones that are shared." Frank always said that a house isn't really a home until it opens its doors to other people who need love. He was right. Frank had always been generous with our home, inviting relatives, friends, neighbors who needed a place to stay. We returned home that night with a new project and a completely renewed relationship. We were no longer mother-in-law and daughter-in-law united by obligation or necessity. We were two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together based on love, respect, and common purpose. That night, before falling asleep, I spoke to Frank in silence. "We did it, my love. Our daughter-in-law finally understood what really matters." And for the first time since his death, I felt like he was answering me. "I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think." Justice had arrived not as revenge but as education, not as punishment but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something much more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship built on solid foundations that no future crisis could destroy.